Morning. Excuse my voice. Welcome to Grand's Knotty-Hobby tutorial for how to read a yarn label. What I have here is a label from a skein of Red Heart Super Saver Jumbo. This means there's more yarn on the skein. Let's cover a couple of things first. This indicates the weight of the whole skein is 14 ounces or 396 grams. This tells you how many yards, 744 yards, are on this skein, or 681 meters. The next piece of the label that you come across is a picture of this item, which can be created with this yarn. Now, you should know that this color does not necessarily match the color of the skein. This is merely a sample using this particular color, and you'll see later on as we go through this why. This tells you that this particular pattern will take 3 skeins. The color they used is Orchid number 530. You'll see that later on as well. This will tell you that the pattern for this is on the back. And I can show you here. This is the entire pattern from beginning to end. How to make this particular afghan. So, this is a product of the U.S. All this is pretty self-explanatory. The manufacturer is the Coats Company, Coats & Clark, and how to get a hold of them. This particular color skein that I took this label from is soft navy, or it is in a couple of other languages. Okay, the next thing we come to is the pull. So if you look at this graphic, you can tell that if you pull from this side, this is indicating to you that you can pull from the center of the skein, but if you pull from the end that's on this side, it will pull from the outside of the skein. So for me, I always pull straight out of the middle. I will warn you, most of the time, unless you can find the very end sticking out, that you may have to dig around with your fingers in the middle of the skein to try to find that end. That's not something that I have mastered quite yet. Even when you do, a lot of times when you pull from this end, you'll get what's called yarf, which means a big hunk of the middle comes out, but usually if you pull it far enough away, you can find the end, and you just work on that little mini piece that comes out, and use that up first, and then it'll be easy to pull from the center. I almost never pull from the outside because it just makes a mess. It never seems to stay in one place. Okay, so the standards for weight for yarn are regulated, actually. There's an organization called Craft Yarn Council of America that regulates the weight of your yarn. There is a standard scale so that all manufacturers produce the same product. So this tells you that this is a medium weight yarn, which is the number 4 on the scale. The scale goes from 0 to 6. 0 being the thinnest, 6 being the thickest. Okay, this square tells you a lot of information, so follow along here. These two actually go together, sort of. So this is for crocheting when you use a 5.5 millimeter hook, which is also an I hook or a number 9 hook. And when you crochet 15 rows and 12 single stitches. So your stitches go this way, your rows go this way. When you have a square that size, it will be 10 by 10 centimeters or 4 by 4 inches. Now, if you're going to do a swatch for a sample to make sure that your tension is correct, that your yarn weight is correct for the size that you want, you're going to make it bigger than 15 rows and 12 stitches. And you're going to count the ones in the middle of your sample. Don't go near the edge. So I would add maybe minimum of 5 stitches on either end of your 12 that you're counting, and maybe 5 rows on either end of your sample, and then count in the middle. It just gives a more accurate count, because typically the beginning and ends may be a little skewed. So the same thing is indicated for crochet, for knitting, with 5 millimeter or number 8 measured by US sized knitting needles with 23 rows and 17 stitches. You should have a swatch that is 4 by 4 inches or 10 by 10 centimeters. Okay, so this little cluster of squares tells you your washing instructions. You can see that your yarn will hold up under 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius water temperature. It does tell you you can dry it. It tells you not to iron it, and do not use bleach. I think that's what this one is. And then it tells you a little bit more information in the next portion. It tells you this is 100% acrylic yarn. You can machine wash and dry, and there's further detail on the back. When you see this indicator that says no dye lot, back in the day, I'm going to go back up here to this section here. Back in the day, when you would buy something called soft navy, you would get another indicator that would say dye lot number, and whatever that number was. If you wanted all of your yarn to look precisely the same color, you would want to make sure. Now let's pretend this is it. And I don't even know what this M9100 stands for, to be honest with you. But let's say that this was dye lot 9100. If your pattern required 3 skeins of soft navy, you would want to make sure that your dye lot 9100 was the same for all 3 skeins. Basically, they used to dye batches of yarn. So if you were to buy a skein that had one skein that had 9100, and let's say, for instance, another skein had 8100, there was a possibility that the shade would be slightly off. It's very rare that that happens anymore. It might happen with artisan yarn, hand-dyed batches, but very rarely in these big manufacturers do you get a shade differential. It's usually pretty universal. So I do want to go back to this a little bit and give you some more detail. Now, I wasn't paying very good attention when I ripped this off. So this is actually the beginning. There's more detail here about how to care. Machine wash, gentle cycle, tumble dry low, do not over dry, do not iron, do not bleach. Professionally dry cleaning is okay. For best results, if you have fringe, hand wash it and lay it flat to dry it. Okay, so this is the beginning of the Afghan that we looked at on the front. It's called the Exquisite Cabled Throw. Here is the designer of it. Here is the expertise level. It's considered easy. The measurements for this Afghan or this throw is 42 by 64 inches, and here it is in centimeters. The yarn that was used is Red Heart Super Saver Jumbo, 3 of them in the number 530 Orchid. So 3 of these extra large skeins. They used Susan Bates circular knitting needles, 5.5, which is a US 936 long cable needle. And of course, here it is in another language. So I'm going to flip back here to the to where this continues on. Here's the gauge. 15 stitches equals 4 inches or 10 centimeters. 28 rows should be 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Using the garter stitch, knit every row. Check your gauge to use any needle and use any needles, any size needles to obtain the proper gauge. So if you need to, because you have a tighter tension or a looser tension, if you need to adjust the size of the needles that you're using, do so accordingly so that your swatch is the size indicated here. The only special stitches in this is a 2x2, 2 over, 2 right cross. Slip the next 2 stitches to the cable needle and hold it in the back. Knit 2, then knit 2 from the cable needle. So the notes continue on, and I'll just leave that with you. It is clear here that you begin with 164 stitches cast onto your knitting needles, and etc. So this will tell you row by row instructions, and how to do your top border, how you finish off. Here are the abbreviations for the stitches you'll need to use to complete this beautiful afghan. So these are the basic tenements of how to read the label on a Red Heart Super Saver skein. Now, just for contrast, I thought I had for you, I do, one from a different brand. This is a mandala yarn. It's made by Lion Brand, and it has a lot of the same information. This is the weight of the yarn. It is 5.3 ounces or 150 grams. It's 590 yards or 540 meters. Here are your washing instructions. You can see here this one is also made with 100% acrylic. This is considered a number 3 or a lightweight yarn. Using your knitting needles, here are your measurement indicators. Using your crochet hook, there are your measurement indicators. Here are your washing and drying and ironing and care instructions. Now, these do use a dye lot, which is why I brought this one to your attention. So do pay attention to the dye lots. This particular color is called Pixie, and again, it reminds you here and here to double check your dye lot. This is a Lion Brand product, as I said. There's how to contact the manufacturer. This as well as the Red Heart. Red Heart is, in my opinion, is more widely available in most retail locations that sell yarn. Mandala can be a little bit more limited. I do know Walmart sells this. I buy almost all my supplies at Walmart. With a very rare occasion, I will go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby. In my experience, Hobby Lobbies, at least in my local Hobby Lobby, has a very limited section for yarn and yarn supplies. So there you go. There's your first lesson in the process of learning how to knit or crochet, learning how to read a label. Please do comment below if you care to, and any questions I'll be able to address for you also right below. So I look forward to you subscribing. I hope you found this helpful, and happy hooking from Gran's Knotty-Hobby.